He never does the same thing twice. It is maddening.
It used to make her crazy because I had no interest in doing something the same way I did it before. Certain things, when you learn how to lay hair properly, you learn that and you always can deflect going back to that. But with today's cameras, it's very difficult to lay hair well enough to do a heavy close-up and not see that it's hand laid. As I said, it made her crazy, and I just love to kind of invent in the moment. It's got me in trouble a few times, but
more than a few
most of the time it worked. No,
3 in the morning, I have an idea, let me use this. It works in 2 hours. For me, I always go back to where do I want to go? If I'm doing a glamour or a character, it's painterly for me. It's really about good painting, light-handed. You can always add, you can't take away. And you have to bring grace and training your eye always to do better.
I'm Tom Burman.
Hello, I'm Bari Dreiband Burman, and this is In the Chair.
Well, for me, it was my father introducing me to Jack Pierce. Jack Pierce told me that if I was half the artist my father was, or is at that time, I should become a makeup artist. So that kind of set the seed. And then my dad bought me a makeup case when I was 12. And so I put beards and scars and things like that on everybody that would allow me to.
And for me, I came from a family of fine art, painting and sculpting. And they were fairly well known in the fine arts world, so I wanted to escape being, the daughter or the sister of someone, and I wanted to have my own identity. So I took my portfolio after I got my degree in sculpting and painting and became one of the first women scenic artists. And then I thought, well, I wanted to work by myself, and during breaks, I would, at NBC, I saw people painting faces, and I thought, I could paint faces, I can do that. And so then I started to go on that lane because they worked by themselves and they were independent. So that was sort of my journey of carving my way in. As a scenic artist, I was with a crew. There was only one other woman with all the other men, and they didn't want us there. So they used to make us carry 10-gallon drums of paint up ladders to hand it to them, but they wouldn't let us do the artwork. So it's okay, you can't break me, and I just kept doing what I was doing, but during my break is when I discovered, makeup. So after that, Mike Westmore was teaching a class at Valley College in the 70s, and so I took that and I thought, well, this is just sort of an interesting transition, because I was never a makeup fan. I just love art. I love anything done well. That makes me very happy. So I sort of switched from oils and watercolors to pan sticks and makeup. It's highlight and shadow, minimizing and maximizing. And I would do free things when I started AFI, and I would do free films, and I would, whatever it took to hone my craft and find my way is what I did. I was comfortable with no.
My father worked at Universal. He did monumental sculptures and hired him in the staff shop because my father knew how to make molds, he knew how to sculpt and so forth. Because of his vast knowledge, they've moved him to the prop shop and gave him his own room. He actually made the Wolfman pieces for Jack Pierce, so that's how he got to know Jack Pierce. Later on, he left the studios. He didn't like working for anybody, and he started his own business. So all of us kids, 5 kids, we made rubber arrowheads and tomahawks and rubber rifles and dummies. I think back then
skulls, right? Did you make skull faces?
Human skulls, all kinds of things. Lots of different things like that. So we helped my father, and we helped him. Sometimes we'd work all night and all weekend and still go to school. So I had an inkling of how to do, not just an inkling, I had some experience, and I could make molds and I could do some sculpting, and I knew how to work with materials. That's how I ended up getting my apprenticeship over like 90 some other people, because there wasn't anybody else that knew that. I had a real good training background to be able to fit into that job. I didn't do any more than when I got the makeup case when I was 12 years old, and I used to play with it. I never took it real serious because I quit school and joined the Marines and got out, got married, had a child, and did every kind of job. In fact, I parked cars at the Hollywood Palladium during the Emmys Awards, never knowing that I would win one. So it's kind of funny. Well, several. And it's interesting that I chose makeup because I literally made up my whole life. And fortunately I went through the right doors. Some not so good, but most of them worked out real well. Because my father worked with Jack Pierce, I still didn't, back then in the early 40s, I didn't go to movies very often. It wasn't until the 1950s. So I didn't have any kind of inspiration in terms of seeing the Frankenstein makeup or the different things that Jack Pierce did. I don't think there was any one particular makeup artist I think that my attention went to. It wasn't until I worked with John Chambers at Don Post Studios that I kind of get an idea that these makeup people weren't just doing beauty makeups and so forth.
It wasn't makeup artists per se, because as I said, I wasn't a fan. I was a fan of excellent art, whatever vehicle that is. But there were films that moved me, like Wizard of Oz. That had an impact on my mind, thinking, wow, look at that, you know? And so I think movies and even Twilight Zone.
You also have to realize that back then, it was very rare that someone got to do any real character makeup or prosthetic makeup. It was, you know, like Charles Laughton in Hunchback of Notre Dame. That was a real rare occurrence. And Frankenstein, the Mummy, and movies like that were very rare. So the likelihood of being able to get in the film business and doing that kind of work was pretty closed. It was difficult to get in the makeup union anyhow because nepotism kind of drove the whole thing. There were the Westmores and the Phillips and families like that. They'd have the whole family.
And the Dons.
And the Dons, yeah. They kind of
And then the Burmans, who knew?
The Westmores at one time ran all but one studio. My very first makeup job I did was on Dr. Dolittle with Rex Harrison. And I was sent to the stage to make up an ostrich. And the ostrich didn't want to be made up. And the ostrich, I had to paint the legs because the legs were kind of purplish and ugly and they wanted to make this into a pretty ostrich. So I took hairspray and I went over and first of all, the thing kicked me. Then they got a trainer to go over and hold on to the legs so it wouldn't kick me. And then I felt this big funk on my head and it pecked me. And after that, they took this ostrich, it was all painted, and they put a tassel or a kind of a head ornament on him. Yeah, it was like a plume thing. But what they didn't realize is the length of the ostrich's neck with that little bit of weight on its head caused the ostrich to slowly turn its head, and then it would run to that direction until it crashed into a car or into a wall. So I went back to the makeup department and said, that's their worry, not mine.
But the funny thing is that, you know, you start doing straight makeup, that's your bread and butter. But my first location was I had to make up, it was for Black Beauty, I had to put the star on Black Beauty's head. I was in Kentucky, and I would be on like 2 or 3 apple boxes painting the star. So we both did animals.
Yeah. And I'll add to that, my first makeup on a person was on a big Swedish model for the movie In Like Flint. And I was terrified because I had my brand new makeup case and all my stuff in it. I'd never done a makeup before. And so I was told to go to what they called the tent outside the makeup department. And that's where we do extras and background people. I was so happy when everybody else got a girl to make up. And I thought, wait, I'm gonna dodge this bullet. And then this beautiful, like 6 foot tall, gorgeous Swedish blonde came in, sat down in my chair, and I turned around, I looked at my makeup case, and I'd look at her, and I'd look at my makeup case, and she says, you don't know what you're doing, do you? And I was terrified. I thought, I never did a makeup before. And she said, well, thank goodness, I was a dancer in Las Vegas for 12 years, and I'll show you. So she taught me started teaching me how to do beauty makeup.
But may I suggest you don't want him to do beauty makeup?
You don't know that. You never saw me do one. No, you never have.
You know what? He left off at blue eyeshadow.
Once.
Let's just leave it there. You want to train your eye to see more and more every day. And so I'm always working on a personal project because every day you're honing your sense, your eye of what you see and how to see deeper and how to see more and how to get better. So if you're spending your time when you're not on the set or doing a show, improving yourself every day, but consistently, then you just can't help but grow. And that's why we're here. We're here to grow and be the very best that we can.
What did I do between jobs? I rode an off-road motorcycle competition Or I'd vacation in Baja and live off the ocean for a couple of weeks. That's what I did.
See, he didn't grow up with guilt. I grew up with
no
guilt.
guilt.
Yeah, I guilt. If you're committed to being the best artist you can be without ego, because that's the part that I find in our industry that trips you up, is that you're so in love with the story of yourself that you drop the ball on why you're doing it to begin with. Ego is not my thing. I just want to do the best work, because at the end of the day, there is nothing better than being exhausted from giving 110%. I mean, that is the high of highs.
We are pre-networking people.
Well, the thing is, right now,
I'm actually...
pre-analog. We know this.
That hurt.
Okay. It's a different time now. I mean, in the 70s and 80s and 90s, you always wanted to socialize, but now with thousands of makeup people and hair people, they're always networking, and they spend more time networking than getting better. And at the end of the day, how many people are great?
Most of my career was, when I wasn't busy and I was off doing whatever I was doing, was 7 days a week, and probably 12, 13-hour days, probably averaging. Sometimes I'd work all through the night, so I never had to network, because I got called by the studios, had a reputation that I could get things done on schedule, which is really important, because there are some people that are really brilliant artists out there that don't know how to keep a schedule, and here, shoot day, they're not ready. It's killed big businesses because of that.
Yeah, you can't call in sick. You work with 102, 3 fever. It's just what you do. I mean, what do you call in and the whole set is waiting for you? No. So it's a different animal of an industry.
My dad said you can't photograph alibis, so you better be ready. My makeup mentor was John Chambers, and he was great. He was a dental technician in the Army, and then he was a maxillofacial technician for people who lost portions of their face, ears, and things like that. He was extremely meticulous. In fact, even when I was an apprentice, I made my mother's dentures. He was somebody who brought that science to the film industry.
Because I got in when they first started letting women in, I didn't have a particular mentor, so I would watch everybody. Everybody had something to share for me. And whether it was watching someone lay a beard, or watching someone doing a cut, or watching someone do black eye, everything was fabulous for me. So I would always be learning something, and I was always open, and I loved listening to stories. A funny thing is, this old-time makeup artist who befriended me when I was at Universal. His name was Jack Stone. So he would tell me, he was very tough, and he said, Barry, if you're ever doing a Western, and you're on the set, and you don't have any hair, and you've got to lay a beard, and you see a dog with a bushy tail, you shave that tail. So these are the things that you don't hear now. Those great stories that are just delicious.
You have to know that back then, when Barry got in the 1970s, women were not welcome in makeup. I mean, the men really did not want, a good percentage of them did not want women, and they fought it. So it was hard for her to find somebody to champion her. You always concentrate on all your screw-ups. Whenever you remember anything, it's always, gosh, I wish I could have, I should have, or whatever. But now I can look back at the body of work and with a lot of pride, and because of some of those things, some of those jobs I really busted myself trying to do the best I could.
For me, I think that it's a very dangerous thing to think you arrived. Every job, you get a script and you read the script, and you are literally trying to work with the director to make their vision come true. So you're inventing, you're always inventing. The good news is there's no rules in this business, and the bad news, there's no rules in this business. If you're approaching it with a good attitude and a great work ethic, you just get better. I think one of my first film I did with Tony Richardson, The Border, with Jack Nicholson. It was like my first, serious department head location in Texas. And one of the scenes was Tony wanted, they'd take this body out of a bag, and the head rolls back and it's a slit throat. I don't do horror, and so I got permission, which you can't get permission, but I got permission to go to the morgue, and I said, okay, I'd like to see a slit throat. And they said, we don't file them by slit throats. And I said, okay. So then they said, but you can come in and we'll open these big refrigerators, and they would just pull these things off. And I'm saying this is that you do your research, but I was, of course, weak after that. But I do realism, and I love anatomy, but that was intense.
When we did City of Angels,
Oh, yes.
which they have to do open heart surgery.
On
Meg Ryan plays a cardiologist, and she does
And
open
Nicolas
heart surgery.
Cage.
Yeah. So I went to Martin Luther King's hospital down in, I think, Downey or someplace like that, and I watched open heart surgery. So all the medical shows, I started going, either I get them on tape and watch them, or I go and actually watch the actual operation.
He watches, I don't
yeah,
watch.
She doesn't do that.
I can't do that.
Gave us a real advantage.
But that's what it takes, is to be passionate about. Like, I'm passionate about anatomy. You didn't even want to do nip tuck when we were called, Mike Robbins, who we worked with on LA Law.
LA Law, yeah.
And so he called us, said, I'm going to do this little pilot, called Nip Tuck for a relatively unknown Ryan Murphy at the time. They said, but they're going to do the pilot in San Diego. I said, I don't want to do this. I don't want to go to San Diego. I said, it's anatomy. I want to hear what this is about. So we went, we did the pilot, which was like an opera, I have to say. He was brilliant how he designed this head for the very first episode. And Nip Tuck ended up being one of your favorite things you worked on.
Yeah, I didn't want to do nip tuck because we had done Chicago Hope. Back then, they didn't want to show you anything. They didn't want to, you do these prosthetics showing heart surgery or whatever it was, somebody beaten up or whatever, and then they would cover it all up with bandages and cover it up with drapery and whatnot. You never see the work you did.
So it was always
And
disappointing.
so it was not rewarding. So I was suspect of nip tuck, the same thing, and so when we went to nip tuck, they said, we want to see everything.
And
I
Ryan
see
would
more than everything.
And Ryan would shoot our work this close. I mean, and we sort of changed television because we brought motion picture quality to television. He let us do whatever we want. It was a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
I'm going to speak for myself. I'm old school. We've all been on sets where people are wearing shorts and flip-flops and putting their feet up on the counter, and they're on their phone. They don't dress professionally, they don't operate professionally, and they wonder why they are not being paid professionally. So you want to look like what you want to be paid, and that's basically my rule of thumb.
What's disappointing today to me when I go on the set, which I don't do very often anymore, it's not as fun, and it's not as, people aren't directed to do the work so much as they are worried about personalities, worried about what somebody says, are they offended, not offended. On Nip Tuck, it used to be funny because they would have these sexual harassment meetings. And I'm sitting back
Nip
there.
tuck,
I'm
sex
sitting
and
back there
surgery.
thinking, are you kidding me? Are you really kidding me? You're talking to us about sexual harassment? Have anybody seen this show before? So, and I find that people have lost the right etiquette. It used to be that when you, as a makeup artist, you stood by camera in case there was anything needed. If the actor needed you, if the cameraman saw something, could you fix this? Could you powder it down? Whatever it was. And I don't see that anymore. I see people scattered all over the set, not even close to the action.
On their iPad.
On their iPads, ordering what clothes or something, food or whatever it is they do. I find it irritating. And I find it irritating also when we talk about how people dress and how sloppy people present themselves. And I think, it's not helping them, it's not helping any of us.
It's disrespectful to who you're working on, and it's disrespectful for yourself. You don't have enough self-respect to appreciate the profession that you're dedicating your life to. And why should anyone treat you with the respect that you want if you don't present yourself that way?
Exactly.
Well, we met working together. We've really not known anything else, and we know each other so well, and it's such a dance for us. I can feel where he's going, he knows where I'm going, and we're both good at entirely different things. It's bliss.
Sometimes when you work with another person, it's competitive.
Right.
But with Bari or myself, we know that whatever we do, it's always with the other person in mind. It's always doing a better job. It's never about competition. And it's funny, we work together and I'll do something and then I'll leave, and then she'll come in and she'll work around the person. And then I'll be watching it, and then I'll say, oh, I got an idea, and then I'll come in and I'll do something. And then she'll be watching, and we just keep doing that until we're finished.
It's all about doing the very, very best job without ego. And I can't impress enough how you got to keep your ego in check, because that's the longevity of the career.
You know, all the studios had turned Planet of the Apes down. It was only Richard Zanuck who believed in it. And even the board at Fox did not believe in the film. And so, fortunately, John Chambers had done a big movie with a lot of appliances called List of Adrian Messenger. But he had never done anything on the level of Planet of the Apes. Nobody had. So we really, literally had to invent that. So for my part, I was able to bring some of the knowledge that I had from working with my dad, making props and all the things that we did. It was kind of everybody bringing their whatever they knew to this project. And there was only like 3 of us doing that, by the way, out of all the people working on it. So it was exciting. It was exciting to invent and create it one piece at a time and figure out whether we could supply this film throughout the whole shooting of it, which was hundreds and hundreds of appliances. It was a challenge, and for me, I literally worked 16 hours a day, and I worked 7 days a week through the whole thing. Never got tired. But when I first saw it, I saw a rough cut, and it freaked me out because the rough cut, it was lacking shots, lacking, you know, still had not done ADR. They had no effects and no music. And I thought, oh my God, this is terrible. I don't know how, I had to go back and tell John Chambers, he wanted to know, how did you like it? And I'm going, I don't know what to say. I said, well, the makeups look pretty good. And he said, well, that's it. But when I saw it in the theater, when it opened up, it was really moving to me because I realized all those efforts had come to fruition, and we did something that would be memorable. I was taking a class here in Santa Barbara, writing your memoirs. First of all, I didn't feel like I could write a book, which I am doing now. But at the time, I thought, you know, I was a little lost in this class, and I thought, well, I'd like to write that tells these stories of my life, and I thought, what was probably one of the most important times of my life, and that's when I started my apprenticeship. And why? Because I worked with all these makeup artists, with Marilyn Monroe's makeup artist, Elvis Presley's, Clark Gable, all these people, that famous people, and they would talk to me about the golden age of Hollywood and how it was back then. I love stories. And so I thought, well, that's what I'd like to write about. And then I realized all of those people are dead now. And then I thought, well, I'm one of those alta-cockers now. And I have my stories. And probably the highlight of my life was, and as far as my career goes, is Planet of the Apes.
What we share is that we love being on the set and listening to the old-timers tell their stories. And they all die with their stories. And the generation that's now don't have any of those stories. And so that's how we started. Well, we'll just do one interview.
Yeah, I started to look around to find out who's still alive from that. And there was just a handful of us. And 3 of them died during the shooting of it. So I thought, geez, I'd love to make a not just write this down, I'd love to make a documentary. We go to the Academy events at the theater here, and the guy that does all the photography for those events, his family, they have a production company here. So I went down and tapped him on the shoulder and I said, would you like to do a documentary? And he says, oh my God, that's my dream.
And we're dream makers.
Yeah. Well, my brother and my brother Sonny, or Ellis Burman, Sonny's his nickname, and John Chambers and I went into business together to do all this kind of work for motion picture and television. But one of the real reasons was that we were working with the CIA and we were doing research and development on disguises for them. John Chambers was a character. John Chambers one time he came into the studio and he said, Tommy, I want to check the books. Let's see what the books, you keeping the books? I said, yeah, I'm keeping the books. So he goes in, he gets the books, he calls me and he says, Tommy, come in here. So I go in, I said, what's the problem? He says, you keeping the books? You're doing it all? And I said, I told you, yeah, I'm doing it. He says, petty cash. You take care of petty cash? I said, yeah. And he says, we're short. He says, get your brother in here. So I get my brother, my brother comes in. What's wrong? He said, Ellis, we're short on petty cash. Do you know anything about it? And my brother said, well, how short? And he said, 64 cents. And my brother looked at him, he said, isn't that why they call it petty cash? Well, Chambers was this big Irish guy, and he had a terrible temper. And he just went crimson, and he stormed out. The next week he came in and said he had Hodgkin's disease, that we had to buy him out. So we took every dollar we had and we bought him out. And our first job was Phantom of the Paradise. So we did all the work for Phantom of the Paradise. I had a couple guys working for me, new guys, and I was off on a day shoot with my brother. And so I told him, I said, these guys come to pick it up, make sure they leave a check or something, don't give it to them. Well, they didn't, they gave it to him. And I never could trace them down to get paid for it. And
They never paid you for Phantom of the Paradise?
No, they didn't pay me. And John Chambers, since he was part of us when just before we started the movie, they assumed he still owned the studio and they gave him credit for it. I had worked with Philip Kaufman, the director, on a movie called Great Northfield, Minnesota Raid. And so he remembered me and he called me in and he gave me the script, and I read the script, and there's all these different things we had to do. And I said, well, you know, we're gonna need a long time to prepare all this stuff. He's only got 3 weeks. I got him, Eddie Henriquez worked with me, and we would literally make whatever we were making for the day's shoot in San Francisco, make it, jump on an airplane, fly up there, shoot it, fly back, get right back to work that same day, and start working on the next thing. And that's the way it went down. And the face on the dog, for instance, Philip Kaufman says, you know, can you put a face on a dog? I said, I don't know. I've never put a face on a dog before. I said, I'm sure we can. We'll figure it out. And she said, well, here's the dog trainer, and we'd like him to, named Carl. And he said, I want you to get together with Carl, and we'll figure out how to do that. And he said, shoots next week. What? Shoots next week? My God. What I did is we got the dog, and the dog was trained to run up there. It was an old 11-year-old boxer. And so I put a little peanut butter in its mouth. So when it runs up in front of the camera, its tongue comes out and licks it. But it's one of those things you don't know if it's going to work. Who ever put a face on a dog, and you never had a rehearsal day or anything. It just had to work the very first time, and it worked the very first shot. I love that movie, and it was great. We did some things that had never been done before. When they crushed Donald Sutherland's head, we cast that all out of gelatin and put plaster skull in it, and you know, that was one of those films we literally
Thought on your feet.
Yeah.
I can take it for myself that it has to start with mutual respect, where you listen to what the director wants. He appreciates that you're on his team and that you want to help him make his vision come true, and you roll your sleeves up. And if you approach it like that, there's nothing you wouldn't do. I mean, most of our relationships in our career are long-term relationships. People that we work with know there is nothing we wouldn't do to make this happen. Whatever their vision is, and we will stand by our work. I don't care if it's 4 in the morning, we're there to make sure that everything goes well.
I think probably the film where we got the most mutual respect that way was through Ryan Murphy. Because Ryan Murphy would present a problem, and then we could talk about it and figure it out and add to it. A lot of times I'll read a description in a script, and it'll dawn on me there's a better way to do this, or a more effective way to shoot it. And he was one of those people that was always open to it.
If you're really good at what you do, then you're part of his team, and he gives you his door is open, and you can collaborate and work with him. A perfect example is we had a production meeting once in NIPTUC. They were talking about the Carver mask, which was supposed to go to the prop man. And I'm listening to it, and I just had this vision in my head. I said, Brian, I want to do the Carver mask. He goes, but the prop man is gonna. I said, but you have to trust me on this. I have to do the Carver mask, because I knew that it needed to be evil perfection, and he let us do it. I mean, but it was that kind of collaboration. He trusted us, mutual respect, and we delivered.
When that happens, there's nothing better.
It's bliss.
Because all we really want to do as a makeup artist is we want to be able to show up and do something that makes a difference in the film. Not just doing makeup, that's okay, but doing something that adds to
the story,
and to be appreciated for that.
And valued.
And valued, it's the best. It doesn't get any better than that. It's never been about the money, and when people don't appreciate you, it's all about the money.
Yes.
It's amazing how the price goes up with somebody who's crappy to you.
I'm not going to mention names, but a producer tried to minimize our contribution to a very important effect, and he said, Bari, you're just a vendor. I said, really? And in my mind, there was a comma added to that invoice.
Yeah.
You know?
Ching ching.
I said, really? I have to go cheer myself up somehow. That's when we began. What a great idea.
I hired her because I didn't want to do a American Werewolf in London transformation. I wanted very sleek and feminine. And so that's when I met Bari and hired her to help design the transformation.
I was at Universal and he had heard about me and he wanted someone to help design Natasha Kinski's transformation with a sort of a feminine, feline approach. And so we met and shared very much of the same ideas and how to go about it. Except he's used to, you know, we'd get these heads, you know, we had a cast of Natasha's head, and most people would just do, like, let's see, a transformation of how many stages was it?
About 5.
5 or 6 stages. But I had no interest in doing a whole head, so I took one head and I would do one stage on one side, one stage on the other, and he goes, well, why aren't you doing the whole head? I said, why? You can see it over here, and then you're gonna go over here.
Yeah, she always does half. That's what she does.
I just want to do half.
But the fun thing about that was one of those collaborative things with Paul Schrader. The whole scene where she does the transformation, I rewrote it. I actually rewrote 3 pages of the script because I said, I got a better way to do this. When she swats at a fly, that was all my idea, and swats at a fly and then grabs on the mattress and then rips back. And I thought it worked. But that was one of those times when, in the same way when Ed Begley got his arm pulled off by the panther, you know, said, well, I got a better way to do this. And he went for it. So what if he didn't like it? He said, no, don't want to do that. Okay, fine. I'm good with that.
I mean, it's their set, but it, you know, it's to their advantage to utilize what we're creating for them. Sometimes a great director doesn't know how to shoot our work. And so they count on us to say, well, what's the best angle? How should we do this? How are we going to get the most for this? And Tom's a great storyteller with that. Especially when you're young out there and you just want to see the tempo of how everybody's working together, who has the power, and you have to always be respectful. If you have a difficult producer, you have to find a way to communicate with them that you are there to serve them. And when they know that you're there to serve them and you're not there to take advantage of them, then they will eventually come around.
When you're young and first starting, it's pretty difficult. It's pretty difficult to speak up about much of anything, really, because there's nothing that these old-timers hate more than some young person, you know, coming up with some idea that maybe throw them. That's why what Bari said, the mutual respect. Once you get that kind of to a place where you can have that honest conversation, then you can say something. But you don't want to go in there and try to force something force a thought that if they don't agree with it, it might be your last day on the show.
And you can present your situation, what you'd like to create for them, and if they still say no, then you have to accept that and be at peace with that, and that's okay, because it's their project. You are there to be a collaborator in making the best possible product, but if they don't want it, they don't want it.
The real test is when you work on commercials, because when you work on commercials, you have the production company, people coming from the ad agency, 10, 12 people with an opinion, and all of them, they want their thought and their vision in whatever you're doing. And so you may have 12 different people with 12 different visions. You got to figure out who's the last person, who really has the power here. That's the person you have to address, and then you have to appease all the others. Working on commercials can be real hard. They'd been shooting. They had another guy making the sloth. Guy, very, very talented. The guy had worked with me for a while. He got stuck and he couldn't get the product out, and they kept calling John Matusak in to have him do the makeup, and the prosthetics would still be in the oven or whatever. It was a lot of problems he was having. The producer, Harvey Bernhard, called me up and said, can you help me out? Can you talk to him? See what he's doing wrong? Is there something I could help him with? So I went over to his studio and I told him, I said, can I give you a hand? And he was doing all the work himself, by himself. And he said, no, I have to do all this work myself. I have to be the one. They're going to fire you if you don't have this on the set. The next time they called John Matusak in. They called John Matusak in at 5 o'clock and he didn't show. So they called me up and said, would you take it over? We're going to go on hiatus for 2 weeks.
December 21st.
And then when we come back, the first shot will be on John Matusak on Sloth.
So we literally, he had 3 months to create this, and then we had
2 weeks.
2.5 weeks. Mechanical, everything. Excuse me.
Yeah.
Merry Christmas. Do I wish that we had the materials now, silicone? This is foam rubber. I mean, gosh, if we could do it now with silicone
We didn't
and the animatronics that we have access to now. But you know what? I'm still grateful.
And John Matusak, we
He was
became really
wonderful.
friends with him. And after the show, he'd come by my studio, and every time he had a problem or something, Tommy, get in the car, take a ride around the block.
He called him his little buddy.
Or my little buddy. This guy's 6'9", 300 and some pounds. His arms are as big as my thighs. Barry's pounding on him. He's telling me, tell her to stop pounding on me, Tommy. I'm getting angry.
My theory
And
is,
I tell Barry, I can't help you here because he killed me.
didn't like me poking at him.
No, he loved you, but you disciplined him.
I did.
Little Barry's with him.
Scrooge was a real potpourri of makeup and great experiences. There were great actors, great makeup we got to do, and it was one of those where I say that we've got to collaborate. I mean, for the Lost Souls, that was a perfect example that they were going to cut that all out.
We weren't even finished with them yet. And he said, I'm cutting that out. We're going to do it on a television screen in the face of that future ghost.
Right.
And we decided we were far enough along we didn't want to stop. So we went ahead and finished them off. And then he said, we're definitely not going to do them. So we took them down to the set and we got behind a box and we had guys set them up so they could puppet them. And I said, when you get a moment, Dick, you want to come and see something? And he said, wow. So he comes back, what do you want? And I said, well, I just wanted to show you. We went ahead and finished the puppets anyhow. I know you don't want to shoot them, but I wanted to show them to you. He goes, well, they're back in the movie.
So there's that great scene in the elevator where he opens up this cloak and there's a Lost Souls. But they said that was gone. Working with Dick Donner was such a blissful time. You had his ear. You didn't waste his time, but it was such a collaborative thing. I think what's brilliant that Tom brings to the table that really allowed us to bring feature quality to television was that he knows how to do shortcuts to get the effect. He's not not taking anything away from Dick Smith and that whole school of teaching, but everybody said, well, you have to do it this way. Well, Tom doesn't work that way. As a sidebar, when we were first dating, he taught me how to do dirt bike riding. And I was, not what you call an athlete, but I was smitten, so I did it. And so I was on the motorcycle and he says, don't look down, look where you're going. And that was such a metaphor for life for me. You don't follow the steps, it's like, where do we have to go? And that's how he creates. He comes up with ways of doing things that most labs would just go, oh no, I can't do that. That's not how you're supposed to do it. It's not how you work.
Well, I know like on the Nutty Professor, Rick took about 8 months to build that big fat suit, which is beautiful. I mean, his work is
stunning work.
But things like on Grey's Anatomy or Nip Tuck, we did a number of those big fat suits, and we had 14 days. So, it's a huge job, and you can't afford to mess up, because one mess up and you're not going to.
You can't call in, I'm
set
sorry.
On the day. Time.
Time.
Preparation time.
A film, it's like a 3-4 month project, or can be, and you meet and you talk and you discuss and you say, well, I need 7 weeks to do this and all that, and so you're given that. On television, you're not given that, but he doesn't like 7 weeks.
I always told Rick Baker, I said, if somebody gave me 8 months to do something, I'd screw off for 6 and do it in 2.
But that's because he has such a wealth of information. The other thing I think your students should know is you cannot skip a step of growth. If you think you can, you are kidding yourself. You have to know what you're doing, and you have to study, and you have to do it. And the reason why he's free when we can be like an alchemist and a magician with when he creates something is because he knows he's done the work.
I always say it takes 10 years. Because it takes 10 years of being a makeup artist, 10 years doing anything before you really start to realize now you know what you're doing. All those scenarios that you have to go through in those 10 years, different directors, producers, different problems, products, actor can't wear this because this adhesive affects their face, or whatever the problems are. You have to go through all those problems, and after 10 years you've been through enough of those scenarios that you now are beginning to know what you're doing.
I think for myself is give 100% every day. Never phone it in, never be lazy. Always hold yourself with respect so you can get respect. And training your eye to see to be great all the time.
That's what I was going to say. Training your eye is probably the most important thing.
I think it's a very well-rounded place to get an education. I mean, it didn't exist, in the 70s. And so it's nice to see that you have people that are teaching sculpting and mold making and makeup. So you really get the hands-on experience, and you have teachers like Steve Laporte and B. Neal who are teaching classes there. So what a great opportunity.
Because of the teachers you guys have today, I think it's really worthwhile. You have to remember that school is just an introduction. It's an introduction to your career. So you want to get the best out of every moment of that school. Various people do things differently. There's a lot of different methods, and you want to kind of try those things out and experiment with them and find out what works best for you, because what somebody else does might not be comfortable to you.
I wish that we were 25 years younger and we were presented with SLOTH to do now with technology now.
Yeah.
That would have been bliss for me. First of all, we had, 2.5 weeks, so that we just had no test time or anything. So it would be my dream to have the silicones and the technology and the time to really finesse it. That would make me happy.
I look back at everything I've ever done, I wish I could do it over again. Because there's something wasn't quite what I wanted. I think that's why people do testing, a lot of testing. Unfortunately, most of our work were without tests because there was no time, because I was willing to take them on.
You have to forgive yourself. And move on, because if you wallow in it, then you're in quicksand. Not all projects are ideal. Like they say, you learn best from your failures. Just be your authentic self, keep your ego in check, look like what you want to be paid, and I bless you all. Thank you for watching In the Chair.
Goodbye, and we'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.